Tonight on CFTK-TV News, a BC community is still waiting for help after being hit by flooding. A major logging operation is facing some questions, and a bit of medical history was made in rather unconventional fashion.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cale Maslin, and here's what's making the news in the Northwest and beyond. To begin, Northern BC's many and recent issues with healthcare is leading to lots of discussions among politicians. With many of the health systems in Northern BC going through a seriously rough patch, resulting in cases like one in Prince Rupert where a man was not fully allowed to stay at their hospital despite suffering multiple seizures and getting a serious laceration on his head, many residents are wondering what will be done to fix the multitude of problems. And in a recent interview, North Coast MLA Jennifer Rice talked about things that are being done to sort out the system.
We have put a lot of money into this human resources strategy and trying to recruit. We have subsequently provided Northern Health with additional funds to attract not just doctors, but other healthcare providers to a lot of these hard to staff places, Prince Rupert being one of them. So we have incentives here for physicians, 3 months of free accommodation while they find their feet in the community, whether they look around to buy a home or rent.
Another mentioned accommodation given to physicians that agree to work for Northern Health is free childcare, but Rice also went on to claim that in this case, recruiting can be difficult because people aren't financially motivated, and it's difficult to compete, so to speak, with other communities that have other services and opportunities that physicians are looking for. And Prince George Valemount, MLA and Shadow Minister for Health, Shirley Bond, also has laid out publicly what she believes should happen to fix the Northwest health system problems.
The first thing that needs to happen for people in the Northwest is that the parliamentary secretary for rural health needs to stand up and speak up about this issue on a regular basis. That's number one. Secondly, we need to look at what will it take to encourage people to make the choice to come and to work in parts of the province which have historically had a challenge recruiting people. So of course we need to look at what are the incentives that might be necessary to make sure people want to come and work in those communities. And I think it also involves partnership.
Bond believes that having the ability to train people close to home here in BC via regional training programs is of great importance as well. And another firm belief of hers is that Jennifer Rice, who is also the Parliamentary Secretary for Rural Health, needs to be the most vocal person when it comes to discussing all these kinds of problems. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Cale Maslin. Today is the final day of the Junior All-Native Basketball Tournament, a major event that took place in several different parts of Terrace this week. In the late morning and early part of the afternoon, the Under-13 finals took place between Gitane-Max and Gitlac-Damex for the girls' side of things, and Hauset and Lac-Caltsep was the boys' matchup. Gitlac-Damex prevailed over Gitane-Max for the girls' championship, and Hauset dominated against Lac-Caltsep on the boys' side. As for the Under-17 finals, those results have not been processed as of yet. A former pastor from Prince Rupert has recently gotten a conditional sentence for 2 years after previously serving 3 years of probation. The pastor goes by the name of Nathan Legault, and he pled guilty back on 2022 to 2 child pornography charges, one for possessing it and the other for creating it. Provincial Court Judge David Patterson was the one who officially sentenced Legault, albeit this decision took place back in January, and its result was only recently revealed to the public. Legault is now on curfew from 5 p.m. until 6 a.m. on weekdays and will be under house arrest all day on weekends. Coming up next, many Fraser Health families are trying to get their children the help that they need. Welcome back. The NDP government is preparing to expect the unexpected when it comes to flooding. The province has invested nearly $40 million to reduce the impact of climate emergencies, but as CTV's Yasmin Gandam reports, one BC community hit hard by flooding is still waiting for help from the province.
Floods and landslides devastated communities throughout BC in November of 2021, destroying homes and washing away highways. Today, the province announcing a new plan to prevent and respond to such emergencies. $39 million is going to fund more than 50 projects. It's what the BC government is calling resilience measures, including strengthening riverbanks in Langley, fixing dikes in Richmond and Surrey, and new cooling centres in Vancouver.
These projects will go a long way towards keeping people and their communities safer from disasters and extreme weather events such as flooding, drought, and extreme heat.
But one community hard hit by 2021's flooding event, Merritt, says it has been left in the dark.
We really need a mechanism where we can acquire either full or partial properties along the riverfront in order to build these modernized dikes.
String adds existing dikes were built in the 1970s and cannot be rebuilt. And without the province acquiring land to build new ones, history will repeat itself.
That window is closing. And so we may be resigning ourselves to maybe next flood. Maybe somebody else has to die. Maybe somebody has to be flooded out of their house. Maybe 640 people.
When asked about funding for Merritt,
we have funded Merritt quite significantly to this point in a number of different projects, and we're happy to see those projects go ahead. We're in very close conversation with them right now.
Strang says government leaders have not set up an official meeting in person to discuss the city's concerns.
We just don't want to get forgotten as the small interior community when we're thinking about flood mitigation planning.
While the federal government has committed $46.5 million to the province to rebuild the dikes, the work can't begin until the province funds another $21 million to buy land for the project. Yasmin Gandam, CTV News, Vancouver.
Dozens of Metro Vancouver families are calling on Fraser Health to make sure their kids get the treatment that they desperately need. A specialist they rely on is leaving, and families don't know if a replacement can be found. CTV's Isabella Zavarisi has more.
2.5-year-old Layden Fuchs loves to run around with his older brother. The progress the toddler has made is something his mom is in awe of and wants him to continue. But recently, the family found out Layden's specialist will be leaving her practice, leaving Layden's treatment in limbo.
It's heartbreaking. I get quite emotional about it every time that I think, okay, now what are we going to do?
The doctor's doors close next month, putting dozens of other families in the same situation. Layden was born with clubfoot, a condition causing the feet to be turned inward. He had his first casts at only 10 days old and continues to wear specially made boots every night.
I worry if we can't find a provider that he's not going to be able to continue with the amazing progress he's doing.
Getting Layden care hasn't been easy. At 6 weeks, his first specialist retired until Fraser Health found a replacement. Now that replacement is leaving, Fuchs doesn't know what to do.
I'm really nervous and overwhelmed and angry because I feel Fraser Health hasn't followed through with us. They haven't followed through in my child's care, and now we're in the same boat as we were 2 years ago, basically, with no doctor and no one to treat our child.
In a statement to CTV News, Fraser Health says the surgeon decided to pursue new opportunities. Adding its physician recruitment team is actively working to hire a pediatric orthopedic surgeon with an expected start date of July. Fraser Health says its clinics will continue through the end of June with the assistance of a locum physician. Fuchs says she's willing to travel to the U.S. or other provinces to make sure her son gets the help he needs. Layden's last appointment with his doctor is next week.
Who's going to take care of him? He needs to be seen again in 6 months. So who will that doctor be?
Questions Fuchs wants answered, so her son can be the active, carefree toddler he deserves to be. Isabella Zavarisi, CTV News, Port Moody.
Vancouver Park Board commissioners recently got a first-hand look at a major logging operation in Stanley Park. Tens of thousands of dead trees that have fallen victim to the looper moth are being cut down. It's a plan that's supported by forest conservation experts, but the city is facing questions about why this drastic action is necessary. CTV's Shannon Patterson is the story.
The sound of chainsaws echoes through the forest of Stanley Park as yet another dead hemlock tree is cut down.
It's been devastating what we saw today. The urban forestry team took us through the major logging that's been going on here for the last 4 months. Just to see the amount of trees that have come down has been absolutely devastating.
Devastating, but according to the park board, necessary. After a years-long looper moth outbreak killed 30% of the trees in the park.
If this was a natural forest, or if this was 50 kilometers north of Vancouver, you'd probably let it be.
But in a busy urban forest like Stanley Park, dead, rotting trees are at risk of falling on people.
And then, the park would probably have to close a lot of trails because then they would become too dangerous.
The dead trees are also being cut down to reduce the risk of an out-of-control forest fire here.
So we just overall reduce the fire load, the fuel load, and that makes us all safer.
The plan to remove 160,000 dead trees over the next 5 years has its detractors. Thousands of people have signed a petition wanting it to stop.
The city could have done a better job explaining to the public what's happening. I spent a lot of time in Stanley Park. I have not seen signs. I've not seen any explanation. They kind of left it to social media to judge what's happening and whether it's good or bad.
There is a plan to replace the dead hemlock. Starting next week, 25,000 new seedlings will be planted in the park.
We have to see this as an opportunity. The hemlock, we're doomed species in this space. The hemlock looper always gets them, but now we have a chance to bring in Douglas fir and cedar and red alder to help provide nutrients for the soil. So this is actually a big transition moment for this park.
We're going to be looking in maybe even 4 or 5 years, and the park will be green again. Forests are resilient. It's going to come back, and I think it's going to come back stronger and better, is what I think. That's what nature does.
Shannon Patterson, CTV News, Vancouver.
Turning to tonight's weather, the North Coast is supposed to have only clear skies at a low down at 1 degree. The Terrace-Kitimat area will also have clear skies, but a low at -2 instead. And the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, they are forecast to be clear too, but their low is all the way down at -14 degrees. On the North Coast, their next week or so is likely to go back and forth between sunny days and clouds and rainy days, while the high goes from 9 to 11. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, the week for them will seemingly see a mix of the sun and clouds and rain too, while the high shifts between 9 and 12 degrees. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, the upcoming week is supposed to deal with mostly sun instead, but with a few clouds too and a high bouncing between 5 and 12 degrees. Checking out the highways now, visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is slippery sections, utility work, bridge maintenance, mowing, and a vehicle incident, plus the Usk ferry is out of service and the cable car is in effect. Highway 37 has some slippery sections too, while also having compact snow, frost heaves, and limited visibility. Highway 37A has roadside brushing, some slippery sections on the Nishka Highway, and the Telegraph Creek Road has slippery sections of its own. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, a car crash in Victoria was caught on video. Welcome back. BC's Premier agreed to meet with a Princeton woman who says that she's had to fundraise to pay for a life-saving transplant. And as CTV's Michelle Bernora reports, other patients in rural BC face similar financial challenges when needing medical care.
When Princeton's Christina Dirksen-Unruh first learned she was a candidate for a double lung transplant, what she didn't know was the financial costs surgery would carry.
26 days before I was set to meet with the transplant team doctor, I was told I had to come up with $20,000.
That money needed to cover accommodation and living expenses for 3 to 6 months in Vancouver post-surgery, or she wouldn't be put on the transplant list.
It was like somebody just pulled the bottom out of our world.
Dirksen-Unruh learned from other organ recipients the cost can be even higher. She says she had no choice but to temporarily take herself off the transplant list and start an online fundraiser. Her financial predicament is not isolated.
I'm so sick, I can't leave here.
William Hastings was flown from Comox to Vancouver General 10 days ago.
I have idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. That the only way to fix that is with a double lung transplant.
And while incredibly grateful to the medical team, he can no longer work and worries about the costs.
We have some money from saving and working. Beg, borrow, plead. I don't know. What do you got to do? Sell a house? Who knows?
Well-being. I unfortunately hear these stories continually. And I've spoken to people in the past who are no longer with us because they couldn't afford treatment in a larger center.
Linda Morris had a double lung transplant in October and took money out of savings to cover living in Vancouver.
We were down there for like 3.5 months, and the accommodation itself was almost a little bit more than $15,000.
She understands what patients like Dirksen Unruh are experiencing.
The anxiety that she is going through, I can only imagine how horrible it is for her. Because the fact that you're so sick and money is what's stopping you from getting a life-saving surgery it's just wrong.
Dirksen Unruh has been trying for weeks to meet with the Premier, so CTV News asked on her behalf.
I look forward to meeting with her to talk with her about suggestions that she has about her particular health journey and things that we could do to make her life easier.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much.
After raising $25,000, she's awaiting some tests and hopes to be back on the transplant list within weeks. Michelle Bernoro, CTV News.
3 people were hospitalized after a high-speed crash at a Victoria intersection. The moment of impact and what happened next was captured on surveillance video. And a warning, the video may be disturbing to some. CTV's Yvonne Raymond with more.
1 minute after a high-speed crash sends a pickup truck careening into a city bus stopped at a light, you'll see the passenger door open. Then people move in to help the driver walk away from the busy Victoria intersection.
It was a pretty spectacular crash for sure. It was very, very fortunate that there weren't more significant injuries or certainly even a fatality in this particular instance.
Police are among the first to roll in 40 seconds after impact at Douglas and Bay Streets Wednesday night.
From witness statements gathered and from our initial investigation, it was determined that the car was traveling at a high rate of speed southbound on Douglas Street when it reportedly ran a red light on the intersection of Douglas Street and Bay Street. The driver of the truck was heading eastbound on Bay Street when the car collided with the truck.
Vic PD is also looking at impairment as a possible factor. The department says one of its members helped 2 people inside the car get out. It's behind the bus and catches fire.
We didn't have to do any extrication activities whatsoever, but we did have to manage fire, spilled fuel, as well as patient care. It was a pretty challenging scene for those first arriving companies.
I don't think they got everything cleaned up.
This business owner on the corner captured the scene on surveillance video.
We get a lot of accidents here. It's lucky they're not all as bad as that one, but it's probably every couple of weeks there's something as light as a fender bender to something big like that.
Everyone aboard the transit bus managed to get out without being seriously hurt. The 3 people in the 2 vehicles were taken to hospital for treatment, and police say the driver of the truck who opened the door has serious injuries that could forever change their life. Yvonne Raymond, CTV News, Victoria.
Medical history was made in Boston as doctors say that for the first time ever that they've successfully transplanted a pig kidney into a living person. NBC's Emil Ideka reports.
Inside this Mass General operating room, a medical milestone. For the first time, a team of doctors transplanted a genetically modified pig kidney into a 62-year-old man whose previously donated kidney failed and was struggling on dialysis.
It's historical.
Dr. Leo Riella first suggested a pig kidney, knowing the patient could not wait for a human one. Of the 100,000 people in the U.S. on transplant waiting lists, the vast majority need kidneys.
Most of our patients have to wait for an organ from the deceased donor list. And unfortunately, if they have to stay years on dialysis, that means their health is going to continue to deteriorate.
Our immune systems typically reject foreign tissue. But through cutting-edge CRISPR technology from eGenesis, this pig kidney had 69 genomic edits to improve compatibility and to reduce the risk of infection from viruses. Still, animal-to-human transplants are riddled with unknowns, including how long the pig kidney will last. But so far, the patient's nephrologist says the results appear promising.
He has the surgery on Saturday, and we think he's on track for discharge this coming Saturday.
So within a week?
Within a week.
In a statement, the patient said, "I saw it not only as a way to help me, but a way to provide hope for the thousands of people who need a transplant to survive."
We need a permanent solution, and dialysis was never made to be a permanent solution.
Could it essentially make dialysis obsolete?
That's our goal.
Emily Ikeda, NBC News, Boston.
And now we turn our attention to the stock markets. The Canadian dollar is down 37/10 of a cent. The price of gold is down $24.70. Oil is down 4 cents. Natural gas is down 2 cents. Aluminum is up $28.50. In Toronto, the TSX is down 103.18 points. Venture Index is down 0.86. In New York, the Dow Jones is down 305.47, and Nasdaq is up 26.98. Still ahead is a sports story on things like theft, gambling, and wire transfers. Welcome back. Allegations of theft, wire transfers, and illegal gambling. The MLB's Los Angeles Dodgers is dealing with a scandal connected to the interpreter for superstar Shohei Ohtani. CTV's Adrian Gobrel has more.
Every once in a while, a story comes out of left field, and this is certainly one of those. Major League Baseball's highest paid player, Shohei Ohtani, has had his name come up in a U.S. federal investigation into illegal sports gambling. The LA Dodgers, who Ohtani signed a $700 million contract with in the offseason, have fired the Japanese superstar's longtime interpreter and friend, Ippei Mizuhara, after questions surrounding at least $4.5 million in wire transfers sent from Ohtani's bank account to an illegal bookmaking operation set off a firestorm of events. According to an investigation by ESPN, Mizuhara had been placing sports gambling bets with a Southern California bookmaking operation that is under federal investigation. Initially, a spokesman said Ohtani had transferred the funds to cover Mizuhara's gambling debt, though that story has since changed, with the baseball superstar's legal team emailing CTV News this statement saying, "In the course of responding to recent media inquiries, we discovered that Shohei has been the victim of a massive theft, and we're turning the matter over to the authorities."
The first thing that goes through people's minds is, oh my goodness, was this a stand-in for a player actually doing gambling? And let's be clear, there's absolutely no evidence anywhere in the public realm to suggest that's the case. You've got a very high-profile client in now a very high-profile story, and no matter what, whether he's been complicit in something or not, you've got to be in serious damage control mode now.
Interestingly, Ohtani and Mizuhara could be seen smiling together in the dugout just yesterday during the Dodgers' season-opening game in Seoul, South Korea. The Dodgers refused to comment on the case today, and it might be some time before we hear from Shohei Ohtani, with 2 separate investigations now underway. One thing's for sure, this story isn't going anywhere. Adrian Gobrel, CTV News, Toronto.
The inflation rate unexpectedly fell to 2.8% last month due to declines in cell phone and internet services, as well as slower growth in grocery prices. CIBC Capital Markets senior economist Catherine Judge said the report shows the Bank of Canada's high interest rate policy is working to tame inflation. Statistics Canada reports say prices for wireless services were down 26.5% and internet prices fell 13.2% from last year. But mortgage interest costs were up 26.3% and rent was up 8.2%. That's all of our news for now. From everyone at CFTK-TV News, I'm Cale Maslin. Thanks for watching.